Hi, Rebecca.
How are you this
I
morning?
am good this
Good.
morning and bright and cheerful. So I heard that you have someone exciting for us this morning, someone who knows everything about everything.
Yeah, I am very excited. So David Jenkinson, who is the editor-in-chief at
Ooh,
C21 Media, he is, not only do they have the magazine, but he and his partner have really grown this business into a massive media company and media brand. And so I just thought it would be really interesting for brands to hear about what's going on in the entertainment industry from that perspective. So I thought we'd bring him on and see what he has to say.
that's exciting. Definitely. Let's bring him on then.
Because also one thing I was thinking, this is the perfect time for brands to jump into branded entertainment, right? They're being
It
asked to be
is.
creative, and they are, here's somebody you can learn from about how to
Yeah.
do that and what to pay attention to in that
Yeah.
traditional broadcast world.
Yeah, and he knows the pulse of the industries.
And from a global perspective,
Yes,
he's
absolutely.
they're in the UK, but obviously it's a global industry, and so he's got the industry at large at his
Yeah.
fingertips.
Yeah, and he has that he's in developing markets you mentioned, so that's also exciting because he can tell us about all of that.
Yeah, here we have David. No, I see it there. David, really lucky to have you. You're super busy as the editor in chief, and you've got a lot going on, and your media mogul is now expanding and expanding. And I've known you for a long time, working in TV and film, and that arena has opened up quite wide, especially with all of the content that's out there and available, and how creative people are getting. And we often see each other in Cannes twice a year. And often it's on the dance floor while I'm at your club on the beach as you're spinning your set. Or I don't even know, do you spin anymore? Or
I do spin, yeah.
you do spin, yeah, because you are proper.
Old school.
Yeah, right?
We used to have a club back in the 90s, back in the day. And so in lockdown, we've reinvented that, like lots of DJs, and we're doing live sets on a Saturday night for 3 or 4 hours. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun, actually. There's good things to find in lockdown. Yeah, it's not all bad. It's certainly testing all of our creativity and forcing us to find new ways to do things,
Other thing that I found really incredible is that when so many magazines were switching to, we're going to have this conference, we're going to have that conference, you really develop these, development markets, or conferences, not markets. I should say markets, because it's definitely much more on the editorial side and bringing producers together in a really early stage, which I find incredible. And they've become like the go-to for our industry. So we have Content Canada coming up,
Yeah.
right? And how are you planning towards that future for all of these different content markets?
Crikey, it's it's an ever-changing picture at the moment. Just to give some context, so we're 22 years old. I think we launched the business in '97 as a publisher, but really more thinking of the business as a community. So we connect the international content community initially through print magazines, then websites, conferences, events, reports, club on the beach in Cannes. But the same mission applies to them all, to connect the international content business and to provide information and services that allow them to better know each other and to better connect and transact. So half of our business is events, half of our business is information. And the live part of events for everybody, of course, is challenged at the moment. We are planning from a P&L perspective that this will last at least a year. So we don't expect, or from a forecasting point of view, revenue-wise, we anticipate that live events might not happen again until the spring of 2021. Now, if they do, brilliant, but I think it's prudent for anybody as a business to have a 12-month plan at the moment, and a 12-month plan that assumes that nothing's going to get back to any sort of normal during that period of time.
Yeah.
So that's bad, but it gives us all opportunity to do things that will support that, and they're all digital, of course. So Content LA was meant to take place this week. Content Canada's due to take place in September. Content London's due to take place in December, but Content LA is being cancelled. Content Canada in Toronto, we're hoping it will go ahead. So we're planning for a live event, but we're also planning for a digital alternative. And so we're bringing in a raft of digital suites and digital services that will allow some facilitation of some of the connectivity and some of the ideas that would have been discussed in that live environment. It will never be the same, but we're all in a compromised position at the moment. Yeah. Same thing with Content London. And in the meantime, we're doing what we can digitally to continue to connect. So we've got an online screenings portal. We've launched online screenings it's been around 15 years, but we've enhanced that. We've launched a C21 FM, a digital radio station to connect the business and allow people to share stories. We've launched a bunch of theme festivals online where we look at different areas of programming and how that might support schedules around the world who've got a deficit of programming that was going to be produced. So we're certainly keeping busy. I'm working 12-hour days at the moment.
I'm sure you are.
Like the rest of us, it's a new normal, yeah?
Yeah, but I do really, when you talk about C21, the main, driver is this bringing the community together and developing a community, and that's so needed right now.
Yeah.
And also providing a way for everyone to be able to know what's going on out there, but also a place where they can come together.
And hear other people's stories.
Facilitate business,
Yeah, it's really important.
It's really important. And you have been expanding on your platform, as you said, with the FM, with podcasts, and what I find so interesting about it is that the news hasn't stopped, right?
No, it's all about one thing.
Right? Yeah, it's all about one thing, which, dare we say it, but I think there's also a lot of really great things going on right now, and especially in development. Because
that's right.
Where development can really thrive.
And we're seeing that play out in all sorts of ways. You've got fast turnaround dramas. You've got the rise of unscripted. So unscripted coming back to perhaps fill some of the deficit that drama will have because it hasn't been able to shoot. So there's a really interesting change in the currents of entertainment globally, and that's probably going to play out across 12, 18, 24 months, so we're going to see changes until we can get back to some sort of normal.
We're speaking largely to a brand audience, and what should they be aware
of? So I think it's about the survival mode that everybody's in and how they're all trying to adapt in order to bridge the gap of time between now and when normal returns. For the television business, which we are, of course, that's our community. The big issues are the collapse of advertising revenue for commercial channels because they're not spending as much money and all their businesses are challenged. The reality of production. So how can you produce a drama if you can't get insurance? How can you produce a show if you can't get insurance, can't fly your people there, can't even get together to restart that production? Although certain areas of the world are opening up. Obviously, New Zealand's back, Sweden's back, South Korea was back, although they've had a little bit of an hour. So it's starting to come back. But even in this return to production, the rules have changed. And everyone's having to bring in a new set of criteria in order to make themselves appropriate, to have the responsibility to put people back together again. So same as running a restaurant or a bar, really. What do you do if you're in that position and you're responsible for bringing people together? You've got to socially distance them. So does that mean you can actually do it? it's very difficult.
Very tricky.
So we're seeing people just try and adapt in this time, which of course is the sort of eye of the storm, really, and do what they can. And everyone's tired of the sort of Zoom stuff, and as effective and as interesting as it has been, audiences, I think, and commissioners have, they don't want anything that's going to use this moment's technology to commission for the future. And unscripted has become a real focus, because drama is going to take at least 12 months before it can effectively start shooting again, primarily because it can't get the insurance and be underwritten to happen. So right now, I mean, what are we, 6, 7, 8 weeks in? It's probably too early to tell what the big trends are going to be long term, but for now, the amount of creativity that we've seen in the digital space. In the UK, we've had a couple of dramas, Isolation Stories and Lifelines, where they've shot on cameras that have been delivered to the actors in their house, sterilized. They've been directed over Zoom, and they've gone out in 2 weeks. They've, from concept to broadcast. So there's a lot of good stuff. There's a lot of good stuff going on, but there's a big question mark on how long it will be before everything comes back.
Right. Your podcast also mentions innovations coming forth as a result of these circumstances. You're talking to people who are creating these new series, like the one you just mentioned. So is there any other innovation or any other content that has come up across the world that have really got your attention?
I don't think there's been anything from a content perspective in this period that has managed to find the light of day beyond those 2 dramas that I mentioned. Right. I think there's been some interesting challenges from the changing shape of content. Quibi, for instance, has not met its audience targets. They were aiming to have 12 million paid subscribers, not by now, but sometime in the future. I think they've got 1.3 active users, and they've dropped off the top 50 on Apple. So Katzenberg is putting that down to the fact that it's COVID related and people are not behaving properly, but not properly, appropriately for his platform. So that's been an interesting hiccup in the sort of the algorithm of content. The growth in subscriber usage, subscribers on Netflix and a lot of these streaming platforms, the growth in audiences has been absolutely terrific. So if you've got a subscriber business, a direct to subscriber business, that seems to be the place to be at the moment. I think medium term, once we see a realigning of production values and people have got a little bit more time to make some stuff, and we all start tiring of repeats, which we're going to do quite soon, then I think we'll start to see a new form of production coming to screens that will probably have to see us through for a period of time, maybe 12 months, because Game of Thrones style programming is not going to happen anytime soon.
Right. Yeah. And speaking to that, really when it comes to distributors versus the platforms, like who's sort of in the driver's seat right now?
Well, the distribution business is having a really interesting moment because, of course, a lot of production has collapsed, which means a lot of stuff that was meant to be delivered for the fall isn't going to be there. And that means that distributors are going back to their catalogs and seeing what's available to fill those slots that will not have anything in them. So at C21, we've launched a series of theme seasons on C21 screenings. We've run classic drama, classic telenovelas, non-English language drama. So we're looking at catalogs to find out what's in catalogs that buyers might want to replace things that weren't happening. So distributors at the moment are really looking to their libraries and seeing how they can make the most of those for a while. So I think there is going to be a year or so of really good archive business from distribution. The problem is anybody that's got a new production that they're meant to be putting into development or even finishing off, and we really don't know how long it's going to be in market by market in terms of how long they're going to have to wait. So it's about cash flowing now until then for a lot of people, isn't it? And what do you do in the meantime?
I wanted to ask, so related to all of this, right? You know everything. Your eyes and ears are to the ground at all
He
times. You
does
know
know
everything that
everything.
is about that. That's what.
Yeah. No, I do. I know everything.
You have this perspective on everything that's happening across the world, and I wanted to know that how has this situation changed your perspective to things? Your perspective, C21's perspective, because the way you conduct things has had to change probably.
Um, I think it's too soon to say, really. The thing that I've been in a sort of a top level sort of thought about that. We locked down really early, about a week maybe before lockdown happened in the UK, and we really made a commitment quickly to do something about it, because the government in our country wasn't on top of things, and it was clear that was not happening. And so I think the way that lots of businesses, including ours, took personal responsibility was really interesting. And that experience, I think, in terms of the lack of trust in authority in lots of countries, has been a definer across the world. And people have started to, I think, really trust or distrust hierarchy in a very significant way during this pandemic. And they've got back round a lot of authenticity. I think the authenticity is going to be a driver for change going forward. We all went to Microsoft Teams straight away. I don't know everything, but the people that work within the business together probably do know a lot. And I think that team play and us coming together on Teams and sharing stuff and creatively trying to work out solutions is very typical of how lots of other companies, either in production or just in business, have and are adapting. And I think that what we're seeing coming out of all this is the style of almost the consciousness of certainly the community in the UK will be historically what I think we remember in this time, how we sort of almost got back around the campfire and sort of shared stories that are very personal and disregarded stories that were fraudulent. And I include our Prime Minister and his government and all of the people that have misled and misdirected what should have been a very, very important drama that was real for all of us. So I think that there'll be a moment when we look back at this where it's like, oh, what we learned in that time was that the creative people were given the access to be creative and get out there really quickly and directly. A lot of the bullshit was chopped out along the way. If it takes 2 weeks to create a drama online with Zoom, why does it take 3 years to commission one? So it's like, I think there's been a lot of calling out about, like, okay, well, that didn't take long, did it? And that's because you haven't got any other options. So why don't we just make it shorter next time and save ourselves some time? So look, there's a lot of big questions for us as mankind, and there's a lot of little questions or smaller questions for survival and our own personal finances and our own personal behaviors and our own personal mental health during this time. It's monumental stuff,
Well, it is this moment of truth, and you definitely see, as you said, the bullshit being stripped away. And I think that's really beautiful. That is what we'll remember, because it is true. Everybody matters. It's not this hierarchy of stars and people with lots of money. It's that everybody can create and everybody matters, and we all have to pull together to do something.
Exactly. It's a really nice moment, isn't it? It's a sort of a democratization of communication in a way, and almost it coming back to the old style music hall days where the audience was as important as the performer, and I think that shouldn't be lost, because we're all being given an opportunity to participate a little bit more, and that's really important. And so I think that there's a lot of really positive stuff to come out of this. I don't know how we'll get out of it in the same shape as we were before, but you know what? That's not a bad thing. There's a lot There's a lot of bad stuff happening before, and maybe it's a time to just, nature's put us on the bench, and told us to have a little bit of a think about our behavior.
And that's a good thing. And maybe we'll cross the other side with a lot less baggage.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
a little bit more kindness and control over who we are and how we represent to the world.
I think that will happen. I think that will happen. I think there's going to be a lot of positives come out of this.
Quick last question from me. We're all sitting on the bench, like you said. So any recommendations that you have on things we must watch while sitting on the bench right now, cooped up?
Well, what have I been watching? I've been watching Normal People, like everybody else in the UK. Very real, very much appropriate for this time. I've also watched Preacher. I don't know if you've watched Preacher. That's a great AMC series. And, well, I actually watched Killing Eve as well for the first time, which I'd not seen, which of course was brilliant, but everyone knows that already. I was just doing catch up on that. And reading, we moved out to the country.
Reading.
Yeah, that's right. We moved out to the country from London 4 years ago, and the sitting room that we designed when we moved to this house in the country, we decided not to put a television in the sitting room because we were going to read books and sit by the fire. And so we put the sitting room in the snug. And of course, we've spent the last 4 years sitting in the snug watching television. So we've really made an effort to go and sit in the sitting room with books and read. And I've really enjoyed that. I've really enjoyed that. And I will definitely take that with me coming out of COVID.
Okay, well, listen, I really appreciate, Haem, I'm sure you appreciate it. This has been a very, very insightful chat. It's so good to see your face. And I hope we get a chance to see each other soon.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed for Content London, fingers crossed for Content Canada.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Just your words, I think, are pretty meaningful for a lot of people.
Well, that's good to know. And by the way, the Content Canada team is doing lots of really exciting stuff on that business, and there'll be some really, really cool initiatives launched in the next few weeks. So I hope you all enjoy the digital effort that's happening there.
Yeah, we look forward to it.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. And we
all right.
See you soon.
Love and peace.
Love and peace. Bye, David.